the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. And today I am lucky enough to be with Marilyn Allen. Marilyn, could you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you represent?
Thanks so much, Alison. It's a great pleasure to be here on your podcast and talking to the Florida writers. I am a literary agent. I have my own boutique agency. I spend the winter in Florida and the summer in Connecticut, and it's called the Allen Literary Agency. I have been a literary agent for about 20 years. Prior to that, I worked in Manhattan for many, many large publishing companies. I was the associate publisher and head of marketing at Harper Collins as my last job. And prior to that, I ran sales and marketing teams at Simon & Schuster, Penguin, Avon. So I have a long history on the publishing side as well as the literary agency side.
So the evolution of publishing has changed so much over the past few decades. So historically, the only way someone could get published would have been through finding a publisher. And now, of course, there's all these different avenues in order to get your own story out there. So what has been the biggest shift that you've seen? And what's the biggest positive shift you've seen in publishing?
Oh my God, that is such a gigantic question. I mean, when I first started out mass market, you remember, Alison, the small little paperbacks, they were everything. Every mall store had big displays of them in front, airports. Mass market paperbacks were kind of the lifeblood, particularly of new fiction, and those have almost completely gone away. I think one of the biggest changes, and there are so many, is the loss of chain bookstores. And I think the evolution of the independents in a way, but it has become more and more of an online book selling game these days, with up to 80% of book sales coming from online. Blessedly, there's a couple of online organizations that sell their books through the indie booksellers, so that helps them. But that's an enormous trend I see right now.
As we see this trend for the online market, and I know that getting your name, your book, your title into a bookstore is pretty much the dream of just about every writer out there. What's the best strategies that we can do to find our titles in a bookstore?
Once you've been published, no matter, depending on that, yes. I think the best way to do that is, I always say to my clients, start local to go global. In other words, start at your local bookstore, befriend them. One interesting trend right now is Barnes & Noble has switched their buying strategies so that instead of corporate buying out of New York, they send one or two books for each title to the stores, and they let the local store managers buy more. This is a great opportunity for authors and debut writers to just go in and say, hey, I'm local. Let me sign the stock. Can you buy more? Can we put up a little display? It's sort of all relationship focused these days. And I think in many ways it helps debut and indie authors.
Now, that is an exciting turn. I haven't heard that. And wow, I'm like blown away because, there are still Barnes & Nobles out there. And I live in Houston, not in Florida, but I live in Houston. And, we've seen so many go, even Barnes & Nobles go away, but there's still the indie bookstores. I mean, there's plenty of indie bookstores, but there are a handful of the Barnes & Nobles nearby that you can find. And so that's a really exciting thing that they are building those relationships with the authors.
Yes. And the strategy is that these local people and the book managers, they know what's going to sell in their area. And what sells in Connecticut is going to be different than Florida or Texas, Alison. So I think that could really help writers.
And your own personal marketing system. So every writer has to have a platform. And I'm going to ask you about that as an agent in a little bit. but we're all told we need to have our pre-made audience. So if I'm going to be publishing my own book and I decide to do it via indie, all my local peeps know a book's coming.
Yes.
So they're, where they might not know that in Wyoming.
That's right. That's why you have to start local and build from there and find out what works. Maybe you're talking to the Chamber of Commerce if you have a business book, or, a local parents group with the children's book, and you can figure out what's resonating with people, what's making them buy your book, and then begin to take that strategy and move it out across the country.
Wow. That's such great advice. And I really do like that they're pushing shop local for everything. Like, shop local for your groceries, shop local for your merchandise. And I love the idea of shopping local for your books.
Yes.
Fantastic. And I mentioned earlier about platform. So if a writer comes to you and they're sending you their query letter, how much stock do you put in their built-in platform?
It's a really key component, Alison, these days. I think with the decline in bookstore traffic, these publishers totally count on authors to find their audience, deliver readers, and it is more critical than ever. But what I think about platform is every author should have their own unique platform. And by that, I mean, I tell authors, please don't try to build a big Facebook following or Instagram or TikTok if that is not you. Find out what works for your audience. It could be LinkedIn for business people. It could be parenting blogs for children's book writers. I love my clients who kind of deconstruct where their readers are and go find that channel. And I have to say, some of the best people are still out there doing speaking engagements or corporate consulting, or maybe they have a wellness, yoga following. So try to find a strategic way to sell your book. Don't try to click a button behind your computer and have 1 million followers. So that's, I think, important for writers to think about to find their readers.
All right. So I've got 2 pieces of great advice. One is to make your local connections and connect with the bookstore. And then 2 is to stay in your field of expertise, because that's where you're going to find your readers.
Absolutely. Writers always ask me for specifics, and I'll tell you, McGraw-Hill, for example, they like their business writers to have about at least 40,000 newsletter followers as a guideline. But I've sold loads and loads of books where doctors don't have any social, but they have a large private practice, that kind of thing. So again, don't get overwhelmed with the idea of platform and, I have to build a social media following. Figure out, is LinkedIn going to work for you? Another thing, Alison, this will be music to your heart. We are finding podcasts really move the needle with selling books. And there's a couple organizations out there that will help you find podcasts appropriate for your content. So I hope I'm conveying to people, don't be overwhelmed by platform, be challenged by it.
Well, I like that shift, because so many people, they start off, they have this great idea and they write their book and they put all their heart and their energy and their soul is all on the page. And then they don't know what to do.
That breaks my heart. So one of the reasons I love to do conferences and podcasts and writing seminars is to just keep writers positive. Write the best darn book you can, and then shift from the creative part and have a business side to you that will focus on building an audience at the right time. Because I think it's 2 separate functions. And I think writers get overwhelmed thinking about the business part. Well, try to separate it.
Marilyn, what type of content or authors do you like to work with?
So I am a boutique agency and I focus on, for the most part, adult nonfiction. I love a lot of categories. I've done tons of books in healthy eating, plant-based cooking, cocktails. I love business books. I love history, science. You can see I love a lot of those categories. I've been selling a lot of mental health books lately, parenting books, pop culture, all kinds of things. So I'm almost open to anything. I would say one of the biggest problems, Alison, I see right now is having done this for so long and literally seeing probably between 50 and 100 proposals a week. Most things feel generic and tired to me. Does that make sense? I feel like I have seen it. So personally, I am seduced by something that makes me say, oh my God, I never thought of that. Or a book that's based on new science, or a new cooking trend, or an award-winning health program. So I like things that have that X factor that haven't been published. And one of the things I tell my clients is, if you're sending me a proposal, I want to see really sharp competition listed in your proposal. And I also want to know that nobody has written this before.
Wow. Okay. That's so the type of research we would need to do would be to come up with what our competition is.
Yes.
And then say our book is like this, only better.
Exactly. And, you know, I say to the hubby all the time, this kind of no new wine, but give me a new wine bottle, Alison. You know, figure out, if you're doing a parenting book, figure out a program nobody else has done. You know, focus on a niche, you know, the crying baby, or if it's a business book, I see one behind me on Connectable. These two experts, business consultants, did a book based on loneliness because their research during COVID showed that people in business were really lonely. So when I saw that project, I said, that is so interesting. I'm looking over my shoulder. Our audience doesn't know this, but there's a book about Wilma Sauce, and she was a woman in the 50s who went to New York and became totally radical at board meetings, demanding more women be on board of directors and fighting for shareholder rights. I love things like that. Footnotes of history, people you've never heard of, but that made a difference. So when I say new project, I don't mean you need to find the new theory of relativity, but I mean, I really want to see a new program, a new approach, an interesting look, new science. Does that make sense, Alison?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. And I really liked the comment of a new wine bottle. You know, I always go back to Mark Twain, who famously said, not in his words, but that there's like no new ideas. It's just we build on top of the ideas. And that's exactly what we're doing now with our writing and trying to make ourselves original. We're building on those that came before us.
Original is exactly right. Say something new. There's 5 million books out there. You don't want to write something that's already been done. And I would say that's one of the biggest problems I see right now. Almost everything fails, generic, or it's been done, or it's tired.
It's like sitcoms. They just keep redoing the same ones over and over again. Like, come on, give the family another name.
We want new.
So what makes a great client?
What makes a great client? Well, I usually, I'm seduced by good ideas, as I've mentioned to you. I look for people that are really adept, Alison. They're adept at writing. They're adept at their content. They understand publishing, and they're collaborative. I feel like when I take on a new client, we're going to be married. I want authors that have more than one book in them. So we're going to have a long life together. So, you know, come to me with ideas, be open to feedback, have fun. You know, this should be pretty joyful time too. It's a great endeavor to get your book published. So for me, clients become part of my life.
Family.
Yes.
Marilyn Allen, how could people get in touch with you, learn more about you and your agency?
Yes. So the best way to reach me is by email. And it's Marilyn, my maiden name, Mara, last name, Allen. So that's Marilyn, Mara Allen @gmail. And I have a website, www.alanoshea.com, which lists all the books that I've done, or most of them. And I am, often at conferences. So look for me around. And I love to hear from writers. So I hope a lot of people reach out to me and tell me about their book ideas.
That is such a great invitation. But now I'm going to invite you to our rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I guess.
What is your favorite holiday?
What is my favorite holiday? I have to say Thanksgiving. A wonderful meal, family and friends, and no shopping involved for gifts.
Well, I happen to have I have two kids that have birthdays right around Thanksgiving. One of them is often on Thanksgiving. He turned 21 on Thanksgiving. It was a really challenging day because you wanted to make it special, but Okay. Do you have a favorite phone app?
Do I have a favorite phone app? I actually am not a big fan of the phone, so I'm going to just say probably no. I listen to Pandora music all the time on my phone. So, and Tiny Desk, the NPR music concerts. I get through many Friday afternoons listening to Tiny Desk music. So that might be my favorite thing.
Great plug for that. And final question, pen, pencil, or keyboard?
Pen.
Awesome. I went to a meeting and someone pulled out they had a little rolled cloth with a whole bunch of pens that were real fancy in there. And I needed to borrow one. So he handed me like a calligraphy pen. I was like, can I really use this?
That's so charming.
It is, isn't it?
It's adorable.
That's what he does on Saturday afternoons as he goes pen shopping. So.
Oh, wow. A real collector.
Yes. Every now and then. Marilyn Allen, thank you so much for stopping by.
Oh, I hope this was worthwhile. It was lovely to meet you, Alison.
You have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. Alison out. Boo! We're all done.
Excellent. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Marilyn Allen is a literary agent and founding partner of Avon Books Literary Agency. She has a cumulative 25 years of experience in doing sales and marketing for various publishing houses. For more information about Marilyn Allen, visit alanoshea.com. For more information about the Florida Writers Association, visit us at floridawriters.org. Until next time.